Welcome to the My Corporate Trainer podcast. What better way to start off our podcast? We're going to be talking about the company, new things every week, or at least most weeks. And what better way to start it off than to have the CEO himself, Ryan McGraw, here with us. How are you today, Ryan?
Doing good, Nolan. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So we're going to start off with just an overview of My Corporate Trainer, the company. How did this company get started, and what do you guys do?
So the company got started back when we were doing work for our previous company. Previously, we had a company called Marcom Technologies where we critique, charted, and gave feedback on every single incoming sales and service call for car dealerships. While we were doing that, we found that while it was fantastic that we were providing these feedback and this training, we would oftentimes have to physically go into dealerships and work with the team there. And when we would do that, we saw great feedback, great improvement from our clients. However, over time, as the length of time increased between training, right, or after we left the stores, we would see that guys would start to forget, the things that they were doing. They would start to fall into bad habits again and start making mistakes. So we came up with this idea of, okay, how can we repeatedly apply training in our stores without having to physically be there all the time, right? There was only so many of us, so it was hard to be in multiple places at once across the country. So what we did is we came up with this idea for this educational technology software, and we transitioned, we started building out that idea there, and we eventually sold Marcom, but we realized that this idea, what eventually became My Corporate Trainer, was too good to sell off. And so we sort of split that off and have been building that and growing that ever since.
Okay, and how did you get your start in this industry?
It's a good question, because I originally had no designs on getting involved in the training world whatsoever, right? I originally wanted to work in film. That was my original dream as a child growing up, right? I mean, I grew up watching all kinds of classic movies, and I fell in love with cinema. But over time, I realized that the more I dove into that kind of professionally, the less passion I had for it. And my other passion, funny enough, was learning and education, right? I always took to that. I always thought that was a fascinating thing, to learn how people learn and to learn how to learn, right? Because that's almost a separate skill set than just learning itself, or learning a skill itself. So I ended up, just so happened that my family had been doing training and education for a long time. So I took a position just kind of to make ends meet, as it were, by analyzing some of those phone calls for Marcom, right? I spent a lot of time listening to, critiquing, and charting those incoming sales and service calls, and did that for a time, worked my way up to a management position in that, and then after doing that for a while, the business sold, and I moved over here to My Corporate Trainer.
That's awesome. So where did you get some of the inspiration for the educational aspect of My Corporate Trainer?
The educational aspect really came from this, it's called an Andragogy, right? Which really means just an adult learning methodology. And it came from something called Guided Discovery. Now, Guided Discovery was developed back in the 80s, I believe, by a man by the name of Les Shapiro. And my father studied under Les for a long time, and learned all about how adults learn best, right? I mean, you can really break it down into see it, hear it, do it, right? Those are the three ways that people learn. And so Guided Discovery is built all around those three pillars, basically. And so we took that and we went, okay, how can we implement that into software, right? How can we take that and spread quality education to the masses? And so we basically just took that, translated it, made it digital, and now it's available to car dealerships around the country.
That is an incredible development. And how else has My Corporate Trainer evolved over the course of its history?
Jeez, how hasn't it? I mean, when we first started it, it was a small screen inside of the old Marcom platform, right? It was just one page that had basically a smattering of ideas sort of spilled throughout it. And we've taken that, we've refined it over time, right? So at first it started off with just a very formal kind of education background, right? Where you'd have an instructor at the start of the room, at the front of the room, who would start a class, and he would walk through everything with the students, and at the end they'd perform a role play at the end, right? And that we scored on something we call a performance evaluation form, where we can take any behavior or any criteria that's or any behavior from between two people, and we can break it down into a set of objective criteria, and you can score it off of that, right? So any face-to-face interaction, like for example, I could build a performance evaluation form on how you're doing as an interviewer, right? Wouldn't that be no pressure there, right? Or I could do it on me as an interviewee and see how well I'm doing in responding to your questions. Now, this is an interview. It's maybe not exactly the best example, but it's an interaction between two people, and you can build criteria around that. So what we've done is we've expanded beyond that sort of just formal education setting, and we have variations now of all of the behaviors that you can imagine doing in a car dealership, and you can do those in 15-minute chunks in what we call a team practice guide, or you can do it on your own in what we call a self-study, and you can walk through it, our class entirely on your own, and achieve just as good as an education as if you had brought somebody in from the outside and sat them in front of them and done some formal training.
Perfect. So you mentioned Les Shapiro's, what is the word exactly? Andragogy, you said?
Andragogy, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. I'm not going to do it right this second. But you mentioned Les Shapiro's methodology, and you mentioned how you have built this platform. It has the self-study, has the team practices, and has those full classes. How does his methodology tie into each of these methods, and how are they built in?
So it all starts with a learning objective, right? So that's sort of the first, the place you start when it comes to guided discovery. There's a lot of trainers out there in the world who don't have learning objectives, right? Who don't understand that it really comes down to two things, which is, are my students learning, and can they perform the behavior, right? So we've baked that into everything inside of the MyTrainer platform. So it really comes down to, again, what behavior do you want your students to learn? So we start off with a learning objective, and we say, okay, this is what you're going to learn. And then we go into, okay, what are some of the challenges that you have as a student when it comes to performing that behavior? It's something we call problems to solve. So we'll address the problems and those common difficulties that they have, and then we'll go into something that's called a baseline. And so a baseline is, without any training, without any education, how are you performing that behavior right now, right? And oftentimes, some people are pretty good, they're naturals, right? They come in and do it, but for most people, they go in and they'll find that they struggle, right? And they might throw up all over themselves a little bit as they're trying to do it for the first time again, and in sort of an educational environment. But it's a good way to go, okay, this is where I'm at now, and you can see what you need to improve on. And that kind of comes back to that performance evaluation form that I mentioned earlier, because on the performance evaluation form, we break down, and it's not a script, I should mention. It's not okay, you must do all of this in this exact perfect set way, right? We're not telling or demanding everyone to do anything in a specific, in like I said, a script, or say things in a specific a sentence in a specific order. It's okay, these are the things we want you to accomplish in the course of this behavior. So we'll do a baseline then to sort of get a measure of where they're at now, and then we train them, and then they do at the end what we call a competence performance, which is you perform the behavior with another person, or you can use our AI, which we named Pip, and you can role play either, again, with human or Pip, and then we score that competence behavior against the PEF, and you can see how you did on your baseline versus how you improved after the training's been performed.
So you're seeing your progress directly, and it's very interactive, is what I'm hearing.
The whole thing is interactive. The way it's been described to us by some of our clients is it's role play on steroids, right? It's one thing for us to go back and forth and just do a role play and go, okay, that was pretty good, now go do it out there in the world, right? Here, we do the role play, and you then review that. Everything's interactive. There's always feedback. There's always measuring, right? That's one of the key things to all of this, right? I mentioned earlier, are my students learning? can they perform the behavior? And we measure that. And so you're always getting insight into how your people are improving every step of the way.
And this is dramatically different from the competitors, from what I'm hearing at least.
Yeah, most we don't like the term LMS, right? Learning management software. We're not a fan of that, because most of those LMSs out there, which people will call our competitors, but to me they're really not. They're attacking something different, right? In an LMS, many times you're watching a video and you're taking a test. You're watching a video and you're taking a test. Oftentimes these guys go into LMSs. I see these guys, some clients of ours at car dealerships, they go in and they'll play a video and they'll put a stapler onto the keyboard, and so that way the videos just kind of keep playing while they walk away from the computer, come back, answer a few multiple choice questions, and boom, that's it, right? That's their education. So we got away from that, because that it has its place, but when it really comes to learning in a really deep and meaningful way, we just call ourselves an educational technology software. So yeah, I'd say it's dramatically different than a lot of the offerings out there.
Perfect. I mean, that obviously differentiates the company, highlights some of the strengths within it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about these interactions. You have role play with other people and role play with an AI. Can you elaborate on some of the examples of what these role plays might look like and why those are good training for the skills going forward?
Yeah, sure. So again, guide discovery, one of the strengths is you can take any interaction between two people and break it down into something that you can measure and improve at, right? And again, that's so key, measuring and improving, or measuring the improvement. And so, we have all kinds of classes on offer. Again, right now we are in the retail automotive space. We'd like to get beyond that at some point, but for example, one of our bread and butter behaviors came from the Marcom days, where we were tracking phone calls. It's our incoming sales call class, right? So, so what you can do is, once you've completed a class, or if you want to, you can just do a role play in the tool as well, if you feel like you've already got a pretty good grasp of the basics. And what it allows you to do is, you can find, if you're a manager, for example, you can go to one of your salespeople and you can say, hey, I want to role play this incoming sales call with you. I've seen that maybe your appointment percentage is down for the month. Let's practice a little bit, get your skills back up to par, and then we'll take it from there and sort of measure that with the tool. So I could go in and I could take the app on my phone, open it up, find the incoming sales call class and start recording it, and then you and I could just pretend that we're taking a phone call, right? And then what you can do is, once you're done with it, you can stop that recording and you can submit it to Pip, and then Pip will actually go in and will evaluate everything on the performance evaluation form and show you how you did. Alternatively, you can do it manually. So as a manager, I could say, hey, Nolan, let's go and do this role play, and I could score you as we're doing our interaction, and then you could take your phone out and score yourself, and we could have a discussion about it after the fact based on how we each thought that you did on something we call the matrix. So whenever you fill out a performance evaluation form, it shows everyone who's filled it out, their scores, and you can kind of compare and contrast how everyone scored that as you go, and sort of see each step broken down into some granular detail. And then, of course, the other way I mentioned is with our AI. So what we've done with Pip is actually really cool, in my opinion. Now, obviously I think it's all really cool, but the Pip stuff in particular I think is really neat, because there's a lot of companies out there right now that have AI offerings for training, right? There's tons of them. They're popping up all over the place. But a lot of them, I don't think, are using AI in a way that AI is best suited to be used, right? Most AI right now is with these large language models, and those have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. I think they're a great tool when used intelligently. And I think what we've done here is really cool, because you can now role play with Pip, and AI right now is really good for role playing, I might add. And you can do any behavior that you can imagine, right? So I mentioned the incoming sales call. I think that's always been one of our biggest strengths, but you can do a needs assessment with, you can do a negotiation, you can practice obtaining commitment, in service, you can take service calls, you can do behaviors in the service lane. I mean, we have just about, again, anything you can imagine. And with the AI, let's face it, car dealerships can get really hectic, right? It can go, at a moment's notice, you can get pulled in 7 different directions. That happens all the freaking time when we're in stores and doing training. Guys need to come and go, and as customers arrive, right? You're really flying by the seat of your pants a lot of the time. So with the strength of AI is you can do that anywhere, anytime, and you don't need to necessarily have another person with you to actually perform that behavior. Did that answer your question accurately?
Yeah.
Okay.
And more.
And
Absolutely.
more. All right. Good.
So everything in the platform is scored,
Mhm.
just to point that out. And then there was one thing, we went through somewhat of the process, but we didn't mention a model. And I want to point out this because I know this is going to be changing at some point. So when we go through, guided discovery, after the baseline, what comes next, right?
Yeah, so I did neglect to mention the model, but yes, typically what happens is after we do the baseline, we actually, part of the training is to show the student the behavior, right? What that ideal behavior looks like. And we have a couple ways that we do that in the tool. One way that you can do is, of course, if you have a manager who knows what they're doing, they know the behaviors well, you trust them, you can have a manager perform the behavior with a student, right? And it's always a great way to learn. It's part of the, you're seeing it and you're hearing it when you're watching a manager do it. But it also comes back again to PIP. Another really cool thing we've done with PIP is not only can it play a customer, it can perform the models as well. So it's particularly in the self-study guides, what you can do is you can have PIP do that behavior and you can play the customer. And so you can actually watch PIP perform the behavior, the ideal behavior for whatever that happens to be. Again, that's a needs assessment, incoming sales call, whatever it is that you want your students to learn, and it can do that in the ideal fashion. It's really, again, cool stuff in my opinion.
Yep. So I know those are coming relatively soon. What else is on the pipeline coming up soon for my corporate trainer?
Again, another thing I think we do differently is going to be our gamification more than anything else. Right now there's a lot of these LMSs out there that they claim to have gamification, and in their defense they kind of do, right? Where you can go in and complete some classes, answer some questions, and you'll get badges, you'll get login streaks, a lot of this sort of surface level stuff that's there. We, on the other hand, we're much more, a lot of us are gamers in the company, myself probably most of all. Self-admitted huge nerd over here, which I've been told I look it too, which I'm not sure how to take that, but that compliment, I guess. So it's going to be a big difference maker for us. Right now we're actually going to be launching our leaderboards very soon, where everybody who's in the software and they complete classes, whether those self-studies, team practice guides, or full classes. By the way, those are the 3 different, major kind of class offering types that we have in the tool right now. Any one that you complete, you're going to get experience points for, you're going to get rewarded for, and those are going to offer you ways to compete with your fellow students, or they're going to offer you ways to customize your customizable avatar and do so much more than that. So that's one of the major things we have coming up in the tool right now that I think is going to be a real wow factor for a lot of people.
So what I'm hearing is, even if an employee is fully trained, they might just be rewarded by going back in and continuing to train, staying on top of it, and they get rewards for it. They can customize a character, they can level up, they can impress their boss by being at the top of the leaderboard.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just, one of the most important things in learning that I think it's overlooked a lot, right? It's really easy to look at training and go, okay, I've taught these guys what they got to do, now they just got to freaking do it, right? And then just sort of check the box off and walk away, right? That's sort of the approach most people have, not just in the retail car business, but like pretty much across America anyway these days. Training is falling by the wayside in a lot of ways. But when it comes to learning, the only way for it to really stick is repetition, right? There's this idea called spaced repetition, where after a certain period of time, I think it's after like a day, I think on average, you've lost about 60% of the knowledge that you've learned in a day, right? So you're down to a 40% baseline after one day. After 2 days, I think it goes down to, it halves again, it goes down to 20%. and drops from there. If you continuously train and you continuously review concepts, you retain more and more and more. So yeah, these guys can be rewarded, and even if they're masters already, right? Yeah, we'll definitely reward them over time. But paired with that, by trying to encourage people to use the tool more frequently and to revisit these concepts again and again and again, not only are they going to have the fun of, ooh, I get to, add this shiny new items to my avatar, or I get to, customize my profile however I like, they're also just going to be retaining more and learning more. So the two concepts kind of go hand in hand with one another and really reinforces, the whole bloody point of training.
And one final step to that is we will be rewarding them in the platform, but they will also be getting better at their job. And that provides a lot of rewards outside the platform as well.
Yeah, the number one that most people care about is more money. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, the better you are at your job, funny enough, the more money you make, right? So that's another very attractive pillar for most people.
What else is on the upcoming timeline for My Corporate Trainer? I know there's a couple other things we haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah, so one of the major ones is we're actually working right now to get more. We're trying to do something nobody else has really done before, and I'm not sure whether that's a courage problem on other people's part or they just haven't put in the work to do it, and that is we're going to tie numbers to training, right? We're going to try and definitively prove, does training affect your bottom line? And so what we're doing is we're working on integrating some of those numbers, whether that is appointment percentages, ROIs, car sold, etc., right? And we're going to tie those back to the training. So that way we kind of have the entire loop, being that you train here, right? You go and you execute that, and then it affects the bottom line, right? There's this difference between, there's this great book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution that talks a lot about lead versus lag measurements, right? So a lot of those numbers I just talked about are lag measurements, right? They're the stuff that, they're important numbers, right, to track and measure, but they don't necessarily, the only way to affect them is with a lead measurement, which happens kind of earlier in the chain. So we're hoping by implementing that training and implementing those numbers into the tool, you can actually see a direct impact on your bottom line as the training happens. So that's something else that's going to be coming real soon as well.
And then as far as growth opportunities, other industries, anything that's near term on the pipeline, or is that something we should not promise yet?
We have a lot of ideas, right? And I don't want to get too out in the weeds here, but one of the areas we're looking at is the restaurant industry. We have some folks that we're working with there. We've been building some PEFs on serving and some of the other front of house operations, at least to start with. At the moment that we've been working on. We have other designs as well. That's probably the one that's furthest along as things are right now, but we're definitely going to be expanding really quickly to other verticals as much as we can.
Perfect. So there you have it, everybody. That's a good introduction to My Corporate Trainer with the CEO, Ryan McGraw. Thank you for joining us for the first episode, and we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Nolan.